Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Adult Sabbath School. Again, we are on a break from our usual series, which is Baptist Covenant Theology. Nasa review po tayo ng mga offices, specifically about the eldership. Ang title ng ating lecture for this afternoon, kakagaling lang natin sa pag-aaral ng mga qualifications. It took 2 lectures. Now we will review ang theology about the plurality of eldership. All right? And again, just a review na banggit natin in the past lectures. Now, when we speak of elders, that is referring to the ruling and teaching office. Okay? Sila po yung binigyan ng authority ng Panginoong Jesus to rule. No? Of course, ang nag-rule ultimately ay walang iba kundi ang head ng church, and that is Jesus Christ. But there are stewards who will rule for them. At yon ang mga elders. Okay? Sila din ang binigyan ng authority na magkaroon ng teaching role sa local church. Okay? Of course, ang teaching ay hindi lamang nakaspecify sa mga pastor or sa mga elder, pero ultimately the teaching agenda in the church must be under the responsibility of the elder. And then also we talked about the other office, and that was the serving and supporting office. And yun ay ang mga deacons. And we talked about their qualifications and duties as well. But of course, ang focus natin for this lecture and for the next lectures ay ang eldership. And we also mentioned that when we speak of elders, that also means pastors. Okay? Pareho lang ang ibig sabihin nun. Usual, common mistake po ito when we talk about the offices. Usually, sinasabi natin, who are the elders and the pastors there? It's the same thing. No? Pareho lang ang elder at pareho lang ang pastor. Okay, we talked about that already. In fact, the differences in the terminology, pinapakita doon yung descriptions ng kanilang roles. When kapag pastor, that means caring, shepherding the flock. That's what it means. Ganun din, no? Sila rin ay tinatawag na overseers. Okay? Ibig sabihin, or in other terminology, very old language, specifically sa office of the eldership, ay ang bishop. Okay, ngayon hindi natin siya usual ginagamit kasi may connotation siya of coming from a different religion. Okay, but bishop is a legit term for eldership. Okay, that also means overseer. So iisa lang ang ibig sabihin ng mga yan. Makikita natin sa 1 Peter chapter 5. Sabi ni Peter, so I exhort the elders. Okay, the elders, yun daw yung kinakausap niya. Yun daw yung ini-exhort niya with the word of God. Among you, ako din bilang fellow elder ninyo as per Peter, and a witness of the sufferings of Christ, as well as a partaker in the glory that is going to be revealed. Ito yung gagawin niyo as you are the elders of this church. Here's what you're gonna do. You are to oversee, because you're also an overseer, right? You must oversee. You must exercise oversight, but also nauna yun, no? Shepherd the flock pa lang nauna, rather. Okay? You must pastor the flock. You must shepherd the flock of God that is among you. At the same time, you also have to exercise oversight because you are overseers. So same office lang ito ang pinag-uusapan natin. Pastors are the elders, and they are the overseers. Okay? Now, when we speak of plurality, doon pa lang sa word na plurality, ibig sabihin, there is an expectation that for every church, there are more than one pastors. Merong hindi lang isa. Yun yung expectations na pinapakita sa atin ng scriptures. However, in our time now, there are a lot of misconceptions about plurality of eldership. Okay? Let me present to you some. But let me quote first yung sinasabi ni Alexander Strock here. Sabi niya, I am convinced that the underlying reason many Christians fear the plurality of elders is that they don't really understand the New Testament concept or its rich benefits to the local church. New Testament eldership is not as many think. a high status, board position that is open to any and all who desire membership. On the contrary, an eldership patterned on the New Testament model requires qualified elders who must meet specific moral and spiritual qualifications before they serve. He also said, such elders must be publicly examined by the church as to their qualifications. They must be publicly installed into office. They must be motivated and empowered by the Holy Spirit to do their work. Finally, they must be acknowledged, loved, and honored by the whole congregation. This honor given by the congregation includes the giving of financial support to elders who are uniquely gifted at preaching and teaching, which allows some elders to serve the church full or part-time. Thus, a team of qualified, dedicated, spirit-placed elders is not a passive, ineffective committee. It is an effective form of leadership structure that greatly benefits the church family. Okay, so it is, in fact, we will present later on how the Bible shows that it is indeed practiced in the early church and even all throughout history. Kasi malinaw naman talaga sa scripture na mayroong plurality. However, again, may mga misconceptions kung bakit marami mga churches ang walang plurality of eldership. Unang-una is that, sabi kasi ng karamihan, plural eldership daw is essentially eldership government. Okay? Now, maybe for some, walang problema kayo dito sa statement na ito na, okay naman yun government ng elders. Ang ibig sabihin niyan, walang role ang church. Walang say ang church sa mga bagay-bagay. Pero we disagree dahil mga Baptists tayo. Right? Specifically tayo mga Baptists, naniniwala tayo sa congregationalism. Ibig sabihin, may power ang congregations. May power ang congregation, specifically sa pag-ordain, sa pag-admit, sa pag-excommunicate. Okay? May power ang local church. Ang problema, kaya ayaw ng ilan ng plural eldership kasi, pagka maraming elders, wala nang power ang church diyan. Not necessarily. Okay? Hindi necessarily na kapag maraming eldership sa iisang local church, sila na lagi ang desisyon ng lahat at wala nang say ang local church. Pagdating sa, of course, sa responsibility ng local church. Okay? So it is a misconception to say that plural eldership is essentially eldership government. Secondly, plural eldership can easily erode to division among members. Okay? Probably familiar tayo sa 1 Corinthians chapter 1 na sinabi doon ni Paul, I would follow Apollos, I'll follow Paul, 'di ba? Tapos ang rebuke ni Paul sa Church of Corinth, teka, si Christ ba divided? Bakit kayo nagdi-divide? O sige, mas ano mo diyan, mas idol mo yung elder na yan, mas malapit ka diyan sa elder na yan, marahil may malalim na ang relationship mo with that elder o diyan ka na lagi, never ka na magsisik ng kahit anong counsel dito sa other elders na ito. Ang understanding tuloy ay, teka, baka magkaroon pa ng division pag dumami ang elders sa isang local church. So wag na tayo mag-plurality of eldership, no? So this is a misconception. Okay? About the plurality of elders. Now, posible po yun mangyari. Posible mangyari na mayroong mga certain members na marahil mas malapit sila sa elders. Okay? For example, kapag matagal na niyang elder, yung isang elder, at doon siya lagi lumalapit, there is a possibility, it's not inherently wrong, pero, syempre, kapag may mga bagong pasok na elders, as much as possible, the members also would, kumbaga, madi-develop din yung kanilang relationship doon sa bagong pasok na elder at itatrato na rin nilang elder. Pero sa simula, natural po yan. Natural na nangyayari yan. Hindi naman yon necessarily problema kaagad. Okay? But not for a church not to move forward and have a plurality of eldership just because of an idea that would immediately erode or automatically erode into a division, mali po yun. Okay? Sorry. Pangatlo, plural eldership is required of every local church. Sorry. So it is required. Okay? In fact, you will be sinning as a local church kung hindi plural lang inyong elders. Misconception din po yun. Okay? Misconception yan. I've known of many local churches na 30 to 40 plus years nang iisa yung elder. I'm not saying that it is good, no? Pero we're not saying na okay, automatically sinful yung church na yan. No? Hindi tayo pwedeng agad mag-advance doon sa ganoong conclusion. It's a misconception to say that it is, I mean, again, yung word, required of every local church. A church that has a singular elder does not mean that they are sinning against God. However, it must be seen as incomplete in order. Para nga sa Titus chapter 1, when Paul wrote to Titus in Crete, sabi ni Paul, "This is why I left you in Crete, Titus, so that you might put what remained into order." Paano magiging in order ang church sa Crete? Appoint elders, okay, in every town as I directed you. So a growing number of members, yes, must be a big consideration to add an elder or to add elders. Pero dapat ang church ay hindi rin basta-basta sa kanilang pag-elect. Doon magiging sinful kapag naging hasty ang church, hindi properly deliberate at bigla na lang mag-ordain ng kung sino man. Malinaw ang warning ni Paul sa 1 Timothy chapter 5. He said, "Do not be hasty in the laying on of hands." Meaning nun, ibig sabihin ng laying on of hands ay ordination. Mag-ordain, mag-separate, mag-sanctify, separate ng man for the office of the eldership. Sabi niya, huwag kayong magmadali, nor take part in the sins of others. Keep yourself pure. Okay? It would be sinful for the church to do this nang hindi sila nagde-deliberate ng tama. So the point here is this: a singular elder in the church must be seen as already a blessing, needing another blessing. Okay? A singular elder in the church must be seen as a blessing, needing another probably set of blessings. Okay? So these are the misconceptions. Let me present to you the assertions. Why churches must consider having a plurality of elders. Now, if you want to ask me, is there a specific text na nagsasabi, you must elect a certain number of elders in every, wala naman pong parang ratio na sinasabi, okay? Pero makikita natin sa mga texts later on na malinaw na hindi lang isa ang elders sa bawat churches nung time nila Paul, ng mga apostles. Sabi ni Alexander Strock, by definition, the elder structure of government is a collective form of leadership in which each elder shares equally the position, authority, and responsibility of the office. When we say sharing equally, doon papasok yung word na parity, which we will talk about next week. Okay, mas magdudwell tayo doon sa parity next week. Pero ibig sabihin lang nun, kapag nag-ordain tayo ng maraming elders, hindi ibig sabihin na merong seniority sa kanila. Ibig sabihin, kahit na 10, 15 years ng elder yung nauna, tapos may pumasok na bata, hindi ibig sabihin na okay, senior or senior pastor yung nauna. Hindi po. Pantay-pantay sila. Doon papasok yung parity of eldership. Again, more on that next week. Okay? So these are different names for this type of leadership structure. More formally, it is called collective, corporate, or collegiate leadership. In contemporary terms, it is referred to as multiple church leadership, Plurality, shared leadership or team leadership. The opposite of collective leadership is unitary leadership, monarchical rule, parang hari, or one-man leadership. All right? So let me share to you some of my assertions here in this study. Unang-una is that you will see in the scriptures that have been practicing plural eldership in the early church. Okay? Plural eldership is practiced by the early church. And if you specifically in our Baptist heritage, in Baptist history, if you read their works dated from 16th to 17th century, malinaw doon sa isang church marami silang elders. Okay? If meron pa nga sila mga church records, if you read such church records, makikita mo doon na hindi lang iisa ang kanilang mga pastor. Okay? Again, may mga evidences yan sa New Testament. If you look at Acts chapter 14, verse 23, and when they had appointed elders for them in every church, right? So may pause dapat. Appointed elders for them in every church. Okay? Di lang yan. Pati sa Acts 15:23, the brothers, both the apostles and the elders. Okay? Again, plural. And when Paul was addressing the officers and the saints in Philippians, in the church of Philippi rather, sabi niya, Paul and Timothy, servants of Christ Jesus, to all the saints, to all the members in the church of Philippi, with the maraming overseers at marami ding deacons. Okay, again, overseers are elders or pastors. We see that as well in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 12 to 13. We ask you, brothers, to respect those who labor among you and are over you in the Lord and admonish you, and to esteem them very highly in love because of their work. Okay? Ito yung mga pronouns, no? Them, their. So I'm just saying plural. Okay? Plural. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 7 and verse 17. Remember your leaders. Obey your leaders. Okay? Think very clear na naman na sa bawat church, mayroon silang practice na hindi lang iisa ang elder nila. Okay? Sabi ni John Owen, the pattern of the first churches constituted by the apostles, which it is our duty to imitate and follow as our rule, constantly expresses and declares that many elders were appointed by them in every church. The nature of the work whereunto they are called requires that in every church consisting of any considerable number of members, there should be more elders than one. And some there are who begin to maintain that there is no need of any more but one pastor, bishop, or elder in a particular church, which has its rule in itself. Other elders for rule being unnecessary. This is a novel opinion, contradictory to the sense and practice of the church in all ages. Okay, so even John Owen, in his time, ay nag-agree sa interpretation ng New Testament that for every church there in the time of the apostles ay hindi lang iisa ang mga pastor. In fact, even yung confession natin, okay? Confession natin na of course ay malaking part doon ay we copied also from our Pedobaptist brothers who themselves agree na there should be not just one leader sa iisang local church. Inassume din nila, no, specifically sa chapter 26, paragraph 8, sabi dito sa umpisa pa lang, a particular church gathered and completely organized according to the mind of Christ consists of officers and members, and the officers appointed by Christ to be chosen and set apart by the church, so called and gathered, for the peculiar administration of ordinances and execution of power or duties. Sasabi lang dito ng mga Baptists is that ang bawat for a particular church, ay isang local church, kailangan may mga officers daw, may mga elders, may mga deacons. Yung mga elders, binigyan sila ng authority ng Panginoong Jesus to administer the sacraments, Lord's Supper, and even the baptism, and even yung teaching sa pulpit, okay, which He entrusts them with or calls them to be continued to the end of the world. Sino yung mga yon? The bishops, elders, and deacons. Okay? Kasama yung deacons doon pag set up ng administration ng sila kasi nagdi-distribute ng mga elemento. Sabi rin ni Kevin Bowder, while the apostles never announced that this practice was mandatory, yung pagkakaroon ng plurality of eldership, it did not proceed without their sanction. If plural eldership were impermissible, surely the apostles would have corrected the churches that implemented it. They did not. Rather, the apostles themselves appear to have been responsible for it. In view of the widespread practice of the New Testament churches, it hardly seems possible to argue that every church must be limited to a single pastor. So sinasabi ni Kevin Bowder dito, hindi naman daw pinagbawal ng mga apostles in their time na magkaroon ng maraming elders sa isang local church. Hindi raw pinagbabawal yun. In fact, sa kanila pa nga mismo sa words nila galing na dapat ay hindi lang isa. Okay? Pangalawa, plural eldership can provide a pastor with critically needed recognition of and balance for his faults and deficiencies. Okay? Of course, there are churches na iisa lang ang elders, no? Saan kaya meron? Pero meron, right? We're not saying again na sinful ito. It would be bad kapag ang local church ay walang or hindi pinagpipray na magkaroon ng plurality. That would be bad. Yun yung hindi maganda doon. Okay? So of course, unless you think that the pastor of a church ay all-knowing at alam na alam niya, wala siyang deficiencies and all, okay, good. Pero hindi ganun ang case. Ang mga pastor ay makasalanan din. Okay? Meron din sila mga faults at deficiencies, mga blind spots. Okay? Na marahil ay hindi nila ito nakikita. Okay? Now of course, mayroong pinrovide na step, na process si Paul sa 1 Timothy chapter 5 na kapag nagkakasala publicly ang pastor, definitely 2 to 3 objectively, if you have an evidence, then 2 to 3 witness, approach the pastor. And the pastor must publicly confess kapag siya ay may sin, definitely. Kaya may ganoong process kasi everyone, nabanggit ko na to before, everyone can say or will say a lot of things about pastors. At kung walang ganong proseso, then every day may lalapit sa kanya about his performance, no? About his preachings, about his teachings, about the way he counsels, about the way he handles things in the church. Hindi mawawalang ng shepherding task yung pastor kung magiging ganon. So very important na naglagay si Paul ng ganong klaseng proseso. However, ito yung kagandahan ng plural eldership. No? Meron siyang mga brothers na pwede talagang kumausap sa kanya pagka may mga hindi naman necessarily kailangan dumaan ng 1 Timothy 5 type of discipline. Right? So merong mga tipong kumausap sa kanya about what he's doing. Very important yun. Okay? Para yun ultimately sa growth din ng local church. Okay? So even pastors again have blind spots, eccentricities, and deficiencies. For the single leader atop a pyramidal structure of organization, the important balancing of one another's weaknesses and strengths normally does not occur. Kapag mayroong mga senior to the heaven senior pastor na kasi you would ask, teka, paano accountability ng ganito? I'm sure for a single elder sa isang local church, you may have asked this question na agad, no? Teka, paano pala accountability ni pastor? Okay? Ako siguro sasagutin ko niya probably kasi baka may magtanong mamaya. I do have brothers who I talk to. So in this church. Okay? Who I also trust. Not to say na I don't trust the men, But I do have mga siguro parang a circle who I talk to about, struggles as well. Okay, just to let you know. Kasi I'm sure tatanungin yun mamaya, so sinasagot ko na. Pero may danger kapag nanatiling mag-isa si pastor sa isang local church. May danger talaga doon. Okay? So kapag sa isang parang pyramidal structure, mayroong senior, medyo mahirap po yan. Okay? Sabi nga ni Robert Greenleaf, sabi niya, to be alone, chief, atop a pyramid is abnormal and corrupting. None of us are perfect by ourselves, and all of us need the help and correcting influence of close colleagues. When someone is moved atop a pyramid, that person no longer has colleagues, only subordinates. Even the frankest and bravest of subordinates do not talk with their boss in the same way that they talk with colleagues who are equals, and normal communication patterns become warped. Okay? Merong danger dyan. At dun malaking tulong ang plurality of elders. Thirdly, plural eldership provides the local church pastors with accountability for their work. Okay, sa kanyang mga ginagawa, malay ba natin na hindi na pala ginagawa ng pastor yung kanyang trabaho? At least hindi alam ng church yon. Pag may plurality of eldership, at least meron siyang mga kasama na talagang nalalaman yung kanyang may accountability sa labor. Okay? Sabi nga ni Alexander Strock, church leaders, like all of us, can be lazy, forgetful, fearful, or too busy to fulfill their responsibilities. Thus, they need colleagues in ministry to whom they are answerable for their work. Coaches know that athletes who train together push another to greater achievement. When someone else is running alongside, a runner will push a little harder and go a little faster. The same is true in the Lord's work. That is one reason the Lord sent his disciples out in two. Okay, merong accountability doon sa pag-preach ng gospel as they go to places. Fourthly, plural eldership helps to lighten a very heavy workload. Sabi ni Alexander Strock, again, in his book, Biblical Eldership, he said, if the long hours, weighty responsibilities, and problems of shepherding a congregation of people are not enough to overwhelm a person, then dealing with people's sins and listening to seemingly endless complaints and bitter conflicts can crush a person. Even the mighty Moses wilted to near death under the pressures of leading the people of Israel. Certainly, every shepherd who has sought to do his duty according to Scripture has felt at one time or another like Moses. To make matters worse, the single pastor system of leadership is often ruthlessly cruel and unfair to pastors. Many overworked pastors are alone and isolated, with the church board and congregation serving as a multitude of ringside critics. This is one reason why there are so many short-term pastors in churches. Many other pastors stay in the same church but are ineffective because they suffer from severe battle fatigue. In a multiple elder system of leadership, however, the heavy burdens of pastoral life are shared by a number of qualified, functioning shepherd elders. Okay? Na lumuluwag ang heavy load ng single elder sa isang church kapag nagkaroon ng plurality of eldership. Okay? I think yun naman yung pinaka obvious na assertion, no, na meron kapag merong plurality of eldership sa isang local church. Panglima, plural eldership allows each elder to function primarily according to personal giftedness. Okay? So ibig sabihin, marahil sa isang plurality of eldership ay mayroong mas gifted sa pagtuturo, Marahil merong isa na mas gifted siya pagdating sa kanyang shepherding, counseling. Yun ang kagandahan ng plurality of eldership. Pwedeng mas magamit noong nagtuturo, yung gifted sa pagtuturo, yung kanyang gift more than the other tasks. Pwede nilang i-balance yan sa plurality of eldership. Hindi necessarily yung same amount of teaching ng isang pastor ay same din nung kabila. Hindi po necessarily ganoon. Okay? Pag-uusapan natin yan next week pag pinag-aralan na natin yung diversity of eldership. Okay? But this is an advantage kapag ka merong plurality of eldership. So this helps pastors to not be forced to do everything and then be criticized for not being multi-gifted. Common po yan sa mga many churches, no? Pero kapag balanced ang system ng mga plurality of eldership, mas makakapag-serve sila ng maayos sa local church. Sixthly, plural eldership is one biblical solution against pastoral despotism. Okay? So elders must not exercise absolute authoritative power. To the point na wala nang involvement kahit church at all. Okay, nangyayari po yan sa mga churches. Kunwari pagdating sa discipline, bigla na lang kunwari may excommunication na nangyari at walang involvement ang church. Hindi po pwede yun. Okay? Syempre pag ang pastor, kunwari hindi niya gusto yung member, teka, tatanggalin ko na kaagad. Delikado yun. Despotism yan. Okay? Para ka ng monarch dyan sa iyong local church. Sabi nga ni Alexander Strock, following the Christian model, elders must not wield the authority given to them in a heavy-handed way. They must not use manipulative tactics, play power games, or be arrogant and aloof. They must never think they are unanswerable to their fellow brethren or to God. Elders must not be authoritarian, which is incompatible with humble servant. Okay, nakakaiyak naman daw talaga kasi yun kapag authoritarian ang eldership. Okay? So yun ang kagandahan ng plurality. Okay? Para maiwasan natin ang despotism. Marami pa nga yung gumagamit ng touch not the Lord's anointed. Okay? Hindi pwede. Hindi pwedeng kahit 2 to 3 witnesses pa kayo. Hindi mo pwedeng hawakan ang inanoint ng Panginoon. Of course, hindi yun totoo. Psalm 105 yun. Okay? It was referring to the prophets. Okay? Yun yung anointed ni God. Hindi po yun mag-a-apply sa mga pastor. Pag may nagsabi nun na pastor, medyo mag-isip-isip na po tayo. So again, review, assertions. Okay? Plural eldership is practiced by the early church. And even all throughout history, specifically pa nga, lalo na mga Baptist nung time nila, 16th, 17th century, talagang practice talaga nila ang plurality. Plural eldership can provide a pastor with critically needed recognition of and balance for his faults and deficiencies. It provides the local church pastors with accountability for their work. It helps to lighten a very heavy workload. It allows each elder to function primarily according to their personal giftedness. It is one biblical solution against pastoral despotism. Okay, now meron naman mga exemptions, okay, for not having a plurality of elders. Okay? Mga exemptions diyan na makikita natin sa history, yung sa mga church records, bakit mga isa lang ang kanilang mga pastor? Kita natin na singular elder in a church, mayroong mga lacking pala talaga ng qualified. Okay? Hindi kailangan magmadali. Kung wala naman palang may gift magturo, wala naman may gift mag-preach, hindi qualified pala yung other men, that's fine. Then kailangan i-maintain yung singular elder hanggat bigyan ng Panginoon ng mga qualified men yung local church nyo. Okay? So that's fine. Pangalawa, a local church with a very small number of members. Paano kung 10 lang sa local church tapos 3 elders? Plurality of elders, 3. Tapos ano ba? Mga 5 yung babae sa sa eldership. So sa eldership, sa membership, sorry. Hindi po pwede babae sa eldership, okay? Klaro lang. So again, hindi naman kailangan, no? Kung maliit na number lang. Okay? Kung maliit na number lang sa membership ay hindi nyo kailangan kaagad na mag-plurality. Okay? Kung mga 20, 25, 30, I would say na medyo kaya-kaya pa ng isang elder. Okay? Pero pag siguro, again, nasa discernment na yan noong local church. Depende yan sa state, sa mga nangyayari doon sa local church nila. We cannot give a ratio na okay for ganitong number, ganito. Hindi po pwede, iba-iba ang buhay ng bawat local church. Okay? Pangatlo, financial crisis in a local church. Pwedeng hindi muna. Paano kung wala? Walang nagbibigay, walang giving. Christian duty ang giving. Paano kung walang ganun sa local church? Then baka wise na wag muna. Pero kailangan isipin din yung church. No, baka ang problema pala ay nasa giving. Hindi pala financial crisis talaga. Kasi kung hihinto ang plurality of eldership dahil may quote-unquote financial crisis, pwedeng mag-suffer ang spiritual life ng local church. Kasi natira lang siya mag-isa pa rin . Okay? So kailangan, again, we leave that to the discernment ng local church pati ng kanilang mga pastor. But yes, it is an exemption, no, kapag may financial crisis sa kanila. Okay? But of course, kailangan maturuan ng biblical giving ang local church. Kaya nga, segue ako, no? Magkakaroon din po tayo ng review about New Covenant giving. Okay? Weeks from now. All right, so that ends our topic about plurality of eldership. Next week, ang topic natin ay parity of elders. Okay? Ibig sabihin, in other terms, equality. Pagiging equal nila. Any questions? Question?
Good afternoon, Pas. I want to ask if all elders need to be full-time elders, or if they can have, if they can do it, if they can also work a job on the side.
Thank you for your question. Not really. Actually, more on this pagka pinag-usapan na natin yung actually pareho, parity and diversity. But I can answer it naman ngayon. No, not necessarily. Kasi syempre titingnan mo din yung finance ng church, no? As much as possible, sana, sabi ni Paul, 'di ba? As much as possible dapat nabubuhay sa gospel yung minister of the gospel. Pero of course, titingnan mo din yung financial status ng church. Paano kung hindi kaya? Then there will be times when the other pastors would have to do kumbaga bivocational sila. And nothing wrong with that naman. So, any more questions? Yes, Stevenson.
Sa church na hindi naman hasty maghanap ng plurality of elders, tapos isa lang yung elder nila, ano yung parang pwedeng gawin ng church na members ng church to help the pastor? Kasi na-bring up nyo nga yung may mga weight sa pagiging elder. So ano yung pwede gawin ng membership to help the pastor?
Right. Actually, siguro the better question would be anong pwedeng gawin pa ng elder para hindi kasi the reason why pwedeng maging hasty ang church kasi baka walang qualified na men, no? There should be trainings. Kailangan may mga training na mangyari para matrain yung mga men doon. No? Kasi baka kulang sa training, hindi nila alam kung ano ang patungkol sa eldership. Kapag natutunan nila 'yon, then pwedeng hindi na pwedeng mayroong desire na mag-grow from the men. And from there, of course, pagpe-pray nila at mag-elect sila, kasi ang problema pag kaya hasty kasi marahil walang qualified na other men. So better to train men. So now, babalik ko doon sa question mo, ano matutulong ng members? Well, kung mayroong gifted men naman na pwedeng magturo, pwede naman siyang pwedeng nag-aalaw naman supposedly dapat ang church na mag-preach ang kahit hindi pastor basta mayroong gift at qualified. So in that way, pwede silang makatulong. Ano pa? Pwedeng yung mga members mismo ang lumapit sa pastor pag kailangan nila ng tulong kasi struggle sa pastor na hindi niya alam kung sino yung may kailangan ng tulong dito, right? Unless talagang iisa-isahin niya. No, pero the pastor would appreciate it kapag sila mismo yung lumapit sa kanya, no? So, yun lang yung maisip ko ngayon na probably pwedeng gawin ng isang member, ng mga members to help. But nandun ako sa much better solution which is for the elder to actually train men. Thank you. Any more questions? Questions? Alright. Okay, humabol. Sige, sakto.
Question po, pag yung sa plurality na-implement, for example, would there be a delegation po dun sa mga elders? For example, this elder will pastor these people or wala po siyang ganun or random po siya?
That's a good question, Ken. Hindi rin wise na magkaroon ng specific people. Kunwari lang, kunwari 3 na kami, no? Kunwari lang. So, bigla may lumapit sa akin, oy, hindi ka naka-assign sa akin, dun ka. Kunwari lang. Hindi siya okay, no? So, organic, no? Pero meron din namang tamang pag-apply ng structure. For example, kunwari 3 sila, mag-uusap sila, etong taon to, bibisitahin niya, etong set of people na to, yung pangalawang pastor, okay, so since bibisitahin mo na yan, hindi ko na kailangan bisitahin pa kasi parang redundant na, right? So, kumaga, hindi ibig sabihin na naka-assign na sa kanya permanently yung mga taong yon. Hindi necessarily kasi maybe the next few months yung other pastor naman ang bumisita doon. Right? So may structure pagdating sa pag-implement ng visitations, ng shepherding, pero yung assign talaga na na okay dito ka sa pastor na to, hindi okay 'yon. Thank you sa question. Any last words? Last question.
Parang related.
Sorry, last question. Sorry.
Related dun sa question ni Ken. How about yung accountability of the members? Will there be like will it be pwede bang like accountable kami to you or the future elders? Meron bang ganong specific na parang these members will be accountable to?
Right.
Parang clear lang na to whom can we go to? To talk to, like somehow counseling or consultation.
Yeah, thank you, Tita. Kapag dating sa counseling, kunwari pag schedule ng counsel sa isang pastor, kahit sino naman pwede niyo pong kausapin. Pero for example, kunwari pagdating sa accountability ng mga issues sa church. Kunwari ako, ay meron akong minute for oversight, may kasama ng counseling doon at kasi may issue, do I have to tell the other pastors? I can, pero pwedeng hindi rin. Kasi kunwari, kailangan ko ng tulong. Kunwari, lalo pa pag bagong pastor yung kinausap ng miyembro, marahil kailangan niya ng experience at tulong doon. So pwede nilang pag-usapan as a body of eldership. Pero syempre hindi dapat yun makakaalis. Maliban na lang po pag sinabi specifically ng miyembro na wag niyo pagsabi sa atin lang. Siguro in cases like medyo yung kaso ay o yung sin ay siguro kailangan i-keep privately talaga. May times na pwedeng hindi pumayag yung member doon. And dapat i-honor yon ng pastor. Pero as much as possible, dapat nagtutulungan yung body of eldership. Wala pong kumaga kayo ay nakasay lang dito sa pastor na to, wala pong ganun. May question yata si Deacon Joey.
If we already have say 2 or 3 elders, 2 questions. Number 1, what if there are differences in doctrinal issues between them? So number 1 yun. Tapos number 2, in issues of church discipline, must there be a unanimity between the elders before any church discipline is instituted?
Thank you for your question. Sa unang question ni Deacon Joey, teka, nakalimutan ko agad yung first question. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, paano kapag may differences sa doktrina? Okay. Kapag may differences sa doctrine, depende yan. So, for example, ako, federalist ako pagdating sa covenant theology. Pagdating yung isang elder, hindi naman siya ganon. Okay lang, hindi naman siya ganong kabigat na issues. Pero kunwari pagdating sa major doctrinal issues, pwede talaga po siyang maging issue sa eldership. In fact, baka nga hindi pa siya, pwedeng hindi siya ma-appoint as elder. Again, depende po dun sa bigat ng differences. Kaya very important din po sa pagdating sa application ng eldership, mayroong public examination na yung candidate ay nasa harap at tatanungin siya ng congregation. Mayroong set of questions. Yung una about theology. Ano yung theology niya about these things, about this, about that. Para publicly alam po yun ng mga members. Okay? So yun, very important po yun. Okay lang may mga minimal na wag lang sana yung kunwari yung isang pastor ay naniniwala pala, let's say for example sa wala lang maisip na iba, kunwari secret rapture, ganyan. Medyo mabigat yon kasi ma-frame nun, understanding na nun yung mga next preachings niya. Okay? Mabigat yon. Ako, I wouldn't ask someone to preach here kapag may ganun siyang theology. So malaking issue yon, pero yung mga minimal lang, okay lang yon. Yung second question nyo po ay nakalimutan ko rin. Sorry. Ano nga po ulit? Sorry. Oh, yeah. Right. Depende po sa church discipline. Kung ito ay umabot na ng public, then church decision na siya. Pero let's say kung private at eldership ang nakaalam, there will be a time wherein pagdating sa decisions, pwede po silang magbotohan. Kunwari 3 sila, pwedeng yung 3 sila ay magbotohan regarding that private church discipline. Again, kapag hindi siya public. Ano, sorry?
Determining whether must be
okay. Pwede po. Yes. Well, when you say umpisahan yung proseso, you mean kailangan niyang sabihin yung matter sa kapwa niya elders?
They feel that this particular issue that they requires private but they
okay. Right. Okay, gets. Okay. Let's say kunwari private church discipline to. If this is private, ibig sabihin yung eldership lang dapat ang makaalam. Ibig sabihin he must also make the other elders know about the actual discipline. Kasi kung private ito at let's say mabigat yung issue, maraming pwedeng implications yung discipline. Like for example, Lord's Supper or meetings. So pwede. So dapat po alam ng elders yan. Any more questions? Ana?
PX regarding follow up lang sa question ni Tito Joey. So kung iba-iba kayo ng may differences kayo sa doctrine, paano malalaman paano pag nagpe-preach tas lumabas? Like how do you decide what to follow? Like whose doctrine?
Okay, that's a good question. Depende yan. Again, anong klaseng doktrina yung humiwalay siya? Humiwalay na ba siya pagdating sa confession?
Hindi.
O problema na yun pag medyo layo na siya sa confession.
Kunyari within, as in there's, of course, there's still wiggle room within the confession, diba? So
Right.
within the eldership, let's say you interpret something differently.
Mhm.
How would you reconcile the differences in what to teach the church? Parang yeah.
Right. Kung ano yung pinaka mas confessional, I would say. Kasi kahit meron kasing, teka, paano ko ba i-explain to? Well, kailangan silang mag-deliberate silang eldership at kailangan nila pag-usapan upuan yung doctrine in question. At kailangan nila mag-decide the majority, whatever this is, mahirap kasi pag wala tayong example ng doktrina eh. Kailangan kung ano yung majority, then yun. Pero again, kung hindi naman siya heretical, hindi naman siya confessional, meron pa ring room eh. Pero again, depende yun. If you can give me a specific issue, doctrine, then marahil mas masasagot ko siya ng mas maayos. Sige. Give me an example.
So, for example, PX trading on the Lord's Day. And
Trading?
as in like buying things, ganyan. Let's say,
I see.
let's say lang.
So for example, kunwari, eating outside, mga ganun. I think hindi naman siya sobrang na-apply pagdating sa actual preaching. There can be room for that. Ako, I think you know my position. Okay lang sa akin. And there are pastors na bawal kumain at all on a Lord's Day. Pero I don't see it as parang lalabas naman sa actual. Pag lumabas, I think kailangan nila mag-usap. So, let me give you another example. For example, kunwari, ito malaking issue, Lord's Day, right? So yun, kunwari, yung isa okay na sa kanya, half day lang, yung iba whole day. I think doctrinally, pwede mong ma-argue yung buong araw eh. So, kailangan mag-submit noong, yung isang pastor na may idea lang na half day lang, kailangan niya mag-submit doon sa, let's say, sa mas clear sa Bible. So, kasi hindi naman siya inaano sa confession specifically eh. Right? So, kailangan niya mag-submit. So, did I answer your question? Any more questions? Actually, may time pa pala. Yes. Any more questions? Tanong pa po? Yes.
Paano kunwari PMC?
Yes.
Sa lahat ba ng pastors kailangan dumaan yung sa lahat ng elders kailangan dumaan yung couple?
Any more questions? Any more questions? Siyempre, alam mo na yung sagot. Hindi. Hindi naman kailangan. Kasi siyempre, una, binigyan na sila ng certificate, natapos na yung 8 sessions, hindi na uulit yon dahil ibang tao lang. Mag-undergo pa lang, Okay. So are you sorry, okay. So ang tanong mo ay kunwari mag-undergo pa lang sila ng PMC at dapat ba silang doon sa bagong elders? Siyempre hindi. Kasi same sessions din naman 'yon. So hindi naman kailangan. Mas maganda kung iisa. Kasi medyo magulo 'yun pagka iba-iba. Pero dapat as much as possible ay yung ibang elders din ay makatulong din doon sa PMC para makaluwag-luwag din yung nag-PMC. Ako naman may tanong.
Hello,
Any questions? Wala akong tanong.
sorry. Hello, Pas. It's not directly related to the matter at hand, but it's related to Anna and Deacon Joey's line of thought. Is there any allowance for interrupting or for the members interrupting a sermon preached by a pastor who's preaching something off?
Okay. Saan ka ba upo mamaya? Interrupting. If the pastor preaches a heretical view, go ahead. If the preacher behind the pulpit preaches to you a different gospel, have the compassion that Paul had when he wrote to the Galatians. Di ba yung reaction niya? Parang sobrang surprised siya. Right? Na sila ay nagpipreach ng other gospel. Kung mangyari yon, definitely go ahead. Kung ibang preaching. Pero kung mamaya nagbibigay lang pala illustration, hindi pa siya tapos, bigla kang tumayo, wait lang, patapusin mo. Okay. Pero you understand what I mean. So definitely pag different gospel yan, dapat protektahan natin ang ating pulpit. So kahit hindi yung other pastors yon, kahit a member, that's a different gospel, go ahead. Yes, I'm not sure kung mayroon kang plano na pero joke lang. Definitely. Oh, yes. Pero again, mamaya kunwari kinote lang si Joel Austin, pero yung pala, gagamitin lang yon para sabihin na mali. At bila ka tumayo ka agad, narinig mo lang yun. Medyo, lang. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So definitely, pag ibang gospel, it should not be, the person preaching another gospel should not be behind the pulpit. Last question? Last question po. Gia? Yeah.
Would it be beneficial for plurality of elders? Because you're studying in CBTS now. So would it be beneficial for the others to also study their in the parang you would be studying in the same like seminary, hindi yung iba-iba, then like you have different professors and stuff like that?
Definitely. While it is not wala nakalista sa qualifications ni Paul na kailangan graduate ng seminary, but malaking kumbaga maganda yon for the elders to be in seminary. Yes, maganda na magkakasama sila, pero hindi dogmatic na, alam mo yun, na okay, hindi pwedeng hindi sa iba. So, yes, John. Tatayo ka na ba? Hindi pa. Sige, bro. Last question.
How about if, let's say, you're a member of one church, but you notice that in another church, there's an unqualified elder. Do you have a responsibility to bring it up with them if ever you visit? Or what's the wisdom in that?
Okay. Well, wala ka responsibility at all. Kasi una, hindi ka nag-covenant with them. So you don't have a responsibility. Ang problema kasi sa ganyan is that hanggang saan ka titigil. Kasi you may see another church na tingin mo on your, siguro probably sa sarili mo ano, ay hindi qualified ito. Susugurin mo, ano mo lahat. 'Di ba? So, di kailangan. Hindi mo kailangang puntahan at sabihin mo na, ay, hindi qualified yan. Parang ganon. So, no need. Alas sobrang kilala mo, sobrang close mo, oy, hindi ka qualified, ganon. Huwag naman. Medyo, I mean, kung medyo close ka na gano'n, I'm not sure if that's a possibility. Pero again, kung responsibility-wise, not really responsible to go to a church and then tell the church na you have an unqualified elder. So, okay? Did I answer your question? Okay.